And we're live.
Hello,
Everybody. Hello, Dominic.
Greg. How are you, man?
Dominic. So last week you did this thing. I was thinking about it today. That wasn't Saturday Night Fever. That was Pulp Fiction. That was my
Oh,
generation.
yes. That was Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, great movie.
Or was it like this? I think it was like this.
Yeah, maybe it's both.
Right.
Classic scene.
I should watch
Dancing
it.
with Mia Wallace. Is that her name? Anyway,
Yeah,
classic movie.
that's great. So, how are things, man?
Things are jamming. Just had a great 4 days with my daughter. Took her apple picking, made some apple cider. Working on her eating, and she ate great. She slept great. So it was a great 4 days. Really enjoyed it.
And she's
How
how
about
old
you?
now?
She's 2. Yeah, she just turned 2. She's now learning the days of the week. So she learned that today was Tuesday and yesterday was Monday. These are big deals.
The adventure is just beginning.
Oh, I know. It's fun though.
Yeah.
It's the best.
So, what's our topic today?
We are talking about the art of self-deception.
Whoa.
Dun,
Whoa,
dun,
wait a
dun.
minute. Are we qualified to talk about that?
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm overqualified to talk about this one. I hate to say.
Oh, you ain't kidding.
way too much relevant experience. I could
agree.
CEO a company of self-deception.
Self-deception.
Uh,
That would even make a crazy person lose their shit, huh?
yeah. Well, I mean, what is self-deception? I guess I break it down as lying to myself.
Yeah.
I think the throwing the art of is a clever twist in the sense that sometimes we have to go out of our way to do it. We have to be clever in the approaches we take, and I think we'll dive into it a little bit. This as we were mulling over the topic before we went live. There's a lot here, as with all the topics we go into. So I don't know what we'll get through today. Certainly I have a few things on my mind, but I think it's something that's been rampant in my life. And as I've worked on myself, I've done it less and less, though I'd say I still do it. And there's a price to pay. There's a huge price to pay for lying to myself and deceiving myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it's a topic that I've only heard a few people talk about, and when I think about this whole thing about self-deception, I mean, it brings up this for me. It brings up this. It's like the antithesis of telling the truth. So there's telling the truth, and then there is not telling the truth, and then there's self-deception. And I don't know that they're all the same. So where to start is kind of tricky for me.
I think maybe just an interesting place to start. As you were describing that, it brought something to mind. And it's something I think most of us are really familiar with and doing to ourselves. And that is making excuses. So let's say that like right now I have an agreement to work out for 20 minutes every day. And I've kept it every day that I said I was going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's certainly been my experience in my life where I said I was going to do something like, let's say, read for 15 minutes a day or work out for 20 minutes a day. And then let's say I didn't do it. And then I'm talking to somebody and they say, well, did you do your exercise? And then I can come up with a million reasons why I didn't do the exercise. Well, it was raining yesterday and I kind of had this like thing in my leg. And so I didn't really, I didn't think I could really exercise with my knee hurting. So no, I didn't do it. And then I come up with all these excuses. And I think that is it's become a lot less subtle of a way of lying to myself as I've become more self-aware. Um, and it's definitely a form of lying to myself because what I've realized is that, like, just my 75 hard is a great example. I worked out every day, 45 minutes twice a day, um, rain or shine, hurt, not hurt, sick or health. And so I found ways to get it done. And an excuse is just like this pass for myself, which is basically ultimately saying I wasn't willing to go through the discomfort of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a price to pay for that.
There's a huge price, and I think that we can expand on that. I think that first we need to kind of dig into what the hell self-deception really is about. So, we all know this conversation that we've got going on in this thing all the time, and it doesn't end. It goes and goes and goes, and sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's calm, sometimes it's crazy. I mean, for me, that's what goes on, uh, and then there's my life, my normal everyday. Wake up in the morning, go to the bathroom, go into my day, and do things. And I have some plans, and on my calendar, I usually have a thing in there. Do exercise like you're talking about, and we have tasks that we want to get done, and people that we need to or want to call. So this dialogue is going on all the time, and I think the way that I can explain it in my experience is that there are this conversation, it directs the things that I do. So, like, let's say, for example, I have to call somebody, and there is something that I need to talk with them about that's not really pleasant. So, this dialogue for me starts to go crazy. Like, okay, go get some water first, and then we'll call. And then next thing you know, an hour later, I'm still having this conversation going on in the brain. Like, maybe I'll wait till tomorrow. So, and that's one example where I'll deceive myself into thinking that to put it off is better than to handle it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
100%.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that there's the same thing with you said about exercise, like, oh, my leg hurts, or I don't really feel like doing it today, and then we, come up with a bunch of stuff
Yep.
about not doing it. So, and the other thing I was thinking about saying is that so self-deception is kind of like what happens is that I lie to myself saying that I'm going to do something and then I don't do it. So that's like another form, like exactly like you were talking about. So what is self-deception really about, and what's the fallout? What's the consequence? And when we follow through with the things that we say that we're going to do or not going to do, there's a result. And what's been your experience when you follow through? What is the result? How do you feel?
Well, it connects me with the intention I set when I was going to do it. So I set an intention. In this example, I'm talking about exercise. And I wanted to feel healthy. I wanted to feel vital. I wanted to feel strong. And the only way to feel that way is to follow through on my intention. And that is to do the thing that I said I was going to do. And so that's it. I can create my reality by keeping my word. And it's the only how do I say it? Yeah, it's like it's the seed is the intention. Speaking it into existence. My word is like following through on that intention to another level. Doing it is living the intention. And then, as you said, now the result is the fruit of all of that. So now I can feel fit. Now I can feel good that I'm the kind of person that when I tell myself I'm going to do it, I do it. Regardless of if my knee hurts, regardless as if I feel sick. And that was my experience on the days that I had leg pain or days that I felt sick, is that I did it anyway because I said I was going to. Now, if I had given myself a reprieve and said, on the days that I feel sick, I'm not going to do it, and that's like how I set it up, fine. But I set it up that I was going to do it every single day, rain or shine, sick or health, hurt, not hurt.
Yeah.
And so then there's real power, and I think this is a topic we've touched on before. There's real power in that trust that I build in myself. And when I deceive myself, when I make excuses, when I ultimately lie to myself about why, because there were days my legs did hurt. But you know what I did? I did stretching exercises on those days. Right? Like I didn't go out and hammer my knee into oblivion and like, I'm such a badass. Now my knee is hamburger. No, like that's not smart. And I found a way to honor my word so that I could go to sleep that night saying I did it. I feel good about myself and how I'm showing up in my life. And then I like that there's power that comes from my word, from not deceiving myself, versus when I deceive myself, I get super slippery. I end up not creating the intention I want, and then I come up with excuses. And then the next time I set that intention, I'm less likely to believe myself because I've already let myself slip one time. So now I'm creating a pattern of just making excuses. And then the more it goes on, then it becomes, it's like, well, now it's a lifelong trauma. And I have this whole story that builds where if I would have just kept my word the first time, maybe it wouldn't even be there.
Right. I'm doing a search right now. Definition of self-deception. Let's see what we come up with here real quick. The action or practice of allowing oneself to believe that a false or unvalidated feeling, idea, or situation is true.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think this fits right in line. Like, I think people often conflate comfort as a goal, and that can be deceptive. And my experience of doing anything that is builds self-esteem, that builds self-worth, typically it's uncomfortable. And if I'm constantly lying to myself about, oh, being comfortable is the game to play, that's a pretty big form of self-deception, because now I'm chasing comfort instead of chasing growth, and chasing growth is where I find real meaning in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your experience?
It is. I think that the kind of the rule of thumb that I've used is always asking myself, how do I want to feel? So if we're using health as an example, there's a million different things that we could use. I brought this up before. There's all these different areas of our life: family, health, money, career, our physical environment, our home, recreation, all that stuff. And when I use the criteria of, or the measuring stick of, how do I want to feel if I do this or don't do this, I think that's been the thing that has really supported me and helped me more than anything, because I don't know about you, but I want to feel good. Whether that's happiness or joy or ecstasy or bliss or whatever people are reaching for in their life. I want to be on that side of the fence. You know what I mean? And so I always think, well, if I do that, or if I say that, am I going to feel good about myself, or am I going to feel like shit? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that basically leads me to, oh crap, my brother's calling me. I have to shut him up. Hang on. I don't know how to do it.
Bring him on.
I can't do it. Can't do it. Which leads me to this, so what I think about in the bigger picture, excuse me, is that all the conditions in my life, everything, my money, my relationships, my health, you name it, my job, all the stuff, all those, the quality of those conditions are all based on this inner dialogue, and whether or not I'm telling the truth or not telling the truth. And when we talk about, when I think about self-deception, I think about, am I either telling the truth or not telling the truth? And then that telling the truth gets kind of divided into two things. And there's telling the truth externally, the way that I deal with other people, and then there's telling the truth internally, which is more on the side of, or which is on the side of self-deception. So telling the truth externally also has consequences, and telling the truth internally has consequences. So it's a double-edged sword. I can choose to talk about my experience with other people and just say it the way that it is, or make up a bullshit story. And then when I walk away from that bullshit story, I feel like shit. And when I just tell the truth about what my experience is, I walk away from that and I feel good, even though it might not have been the best thing to say or whatever. At least I told the truth. So it's all about getting back to, how do I want to feel about me?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how about you? Is that your experience?
Yeah, I think you're touching on something really interesting, and that is, we have a nature. I think a lot of us, certainly this is part of my nature and something I've had to become really aware of in myself, is this desire to people please, this desire to say the nice thing. I don't want to ruffle people's feathers.
Right.
And so then I end up really, and this is where it gets really, I think the art of self-deception, I can talk, comes into play, where who am I really deceiving? If I go have a fluff conversation with somebody and I give them everything they want to hear, who am I really deceiving? Ultimately, what I found is that I'm watering myself down. I'm lying to myself about how I want to show up in my life. And it's not like I go around intending to offend people. That's never my intention. And oftentimes, certainly with certain topics, I just stay away. I don't even talk about it unless somebody elicits my opinion. And once they ask my opinion, well, you better be ready for the answer, because I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel. And then ultimately some people get upset with my opinion, and it's like, well, listen, you asked for the honest truth. Would you rather I just tell you something that makes you feel good? Like, what's the point in that? And it reminds me, actually, it's a really interesting experiment. It's called, I may have mentioned this before, but it's called the Asch conformity experiment.
Ash?
ASCH.
Never heard of that.
And this is really fascinating. And this is, I think a form of self-deception is very much in line with, I don't want to be seen as somebody who's not conforming. I think that's an easy trap for people to get into. And so there's this experiment where you get like, say, 20 people in a room in a semicircle, and then they project some image on a screen. In this instance, let's say they project a triangle on the screen. So all 20 of these people are looking at the screen.
I remember this now.
Yeah, and then 19 of them are Confederates. They're spies. They're in on it. So when the triangle is projected on the screen, and then they ask around to the first 19 people, what do you see? And they all say, I see a circle. I see a circle. I see a circle. I see a circle. And now the last person who doesn't know what's going on, they don't know that the last 19 people are in on this experiment. And it gets to this person and I ask them, what do they see? Well, they've been seeing a triangle this whole time. But because every single other person said it was a circle, the vast majority of people will go on to say that they see a circle, even though they see a triangle. And I find that absolutely fascinating, right? And I could see a time in my life where I would have just been like freaking out, like, oh my God, everybody sees a circle. Why do I see a triangle? What's wrong with me? But what it is it's literally a brainwashing. It's a mental conformity exercise to get people to conform to the message. And when you hear something repeated over and over and over and over and over, and you hear all your friends are saying it, and your family's saying it, and the media's saying it, and this person's saying it, and that person's saying it, all of a sudden, to not say that, you become like the oddball. And it is absolutely a blatant form of self-deception, because what I see is a triangle.
That's
So
true.
now, so it's like the psychology of it is so fascinating, because we want to look good to other people. We want to fit in. We want to feel like we belong. And that need for like that comfort versus like telling the truth is it's an interesting, I mean, it feels like it could be a lifelong thing to study in of itself. But that's why, for me personally, I've become a lot less caring about if the majority of people feel a certain way. To me, that's not telling that that's the truth. To me, it could be the truth, but really what it tells me is that a lot of people agreed on something and then just decided to agree on it because it's so much more comfortable to agree on it than disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah,
dangerous.
I get it. I think that the in your example, so then I want to conform because other people are saying one thing, and even though I may see something different or have a different perspective, I blend in. But I think there's a consequence to that. And I mean, I certainly have done that before. And what I begin to realize is that when I don't honor myself, my when I don't express myself and tell the truth externally and even internally, and I want to talk about that in just a minute, but when I don't express myself externally, telling the truth coming from my personal experience and not exaggerating it, is that there are consequences to that. And the consequence is that the clarity that I have as I go through my life becomes foggy because I'm walking around carrying that conversation that I bullshitted my way through, and I'm carrying that conversation that I bullshitted my way through. And then there's the totality of the thousands of conversations that if I bullshit my way through there, all I'm doing is walking around with this confused brain, this confusion. So my mind clarity goes to shit. And so then, you know, that's been my experience. And it's interesting because knowing that, and I observe other people, I can see that they're doing the same thing. However, they're not aware of it,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, oh my God, it's kind of horrifying. Like they I know they're blowing smoke, and they don't even know it. Or they do know it, but they don't know what the consequences are in the end.
Right. Well, imagine my example, right? And now you have the post party. Everybody gets together. And now everyone's talking about, wow, what a great circle we saw on that screen. Man, that was a great circle. And then you have to sit there and perpetuate this lie. Oh, yeah, that circle, beautiful, perfect, rounded. Everything about it was amazing. They ask you, what did you like about the circle? Oh, yeah, this, and I couldn't believe the size. Like the size of that circle was, and and eventually you might even start to believe it. You might even start to believe that was a circle, because the consequences of it not being a circle are so devastating that now you're not going to be invited to that party. You're not going to be friends with these people anymore. All these people, it's like, but to your point, as when the dust settles, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who I am anymore. I lose track of who I am, and what my experience in reality is anchored to,
Mm-hmm.
because and it's going to be a self-perpetuating cycle where I'm constantly seeking validation for other people's approval, for my own self-worth, and looking for other people to agree with me, or if somebody disagrees with me, then that hurts my self-esteem, and all these different things, instead of just like what I've been practicing is just owning my own experience. And maybe it's not right, maybe whatever, and I can always account for my own experience the way that it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the end result of the whole external self deception is that I end up being confused. Now flip it over to internal, right? So internal lying is like that's the self deception. I internally lie. Say I'm going to do something that I don't, and then I create duality and all this stuff. That's a whole nother topic. But I create this voice that said I'm going to do this, and then I don't do it, and now I have two voices in my head, conflicting voices. Well, you said you were going to do it. I know, but I had a good excuse. Well, why did you buy into that bullshit excuse? Well, because I blah, 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 So then we create this, what's the word? Two-ness,
Yeah.
duality, right?
Yeah.
Duality. And the bottom line of that, all that confusion that's in there, I mean, I think that that's what we need to get out of, that confusion. But while we're in that confusion and we don't even know that we're in that confusion, the bottom line of it is that we end up feeling insecure, doubting ourselves. Like you said, self-esteem, all that stuff goes down, and we don't even know that that's happening. And we end up, laying on the couch with the psychiatrist saying, I don't know what's wrong with me. The psychiatrist, if they're good, probably already knows, but they won't tell them because they need to have them there in the seat or on the couch so that they can draw an income. You know what I mean? It becomes really insane. So what I think about is, what do I need to do, or what do I need to not do in order to keep myself like above the line? We can be above the line and be conscious and be aware and watch ourselves and tell the truth and like that, or we can be the below the line, which is like being unaware of that we're saying or doing or not doing and all that stuff. I mean, I want to be above the line.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, that's the game. That's the game of life. That's the only game in town, is being conscious, being awake, working on myself, growth. I mean, that's it. Otherwise, I,
And it's not an easy game. However, it's wanting to be a player in the game. If I just want to sit on the sidelines and watch the game, I don't think I mean, I've been there. I've been watching, I've watched the game before and I never really benefited from it. But when I got in the game and became curious, like, what am I really going to do for me? It changed, it shifted the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a game changer. And there's a way to, if, in my experience, because I've been below, under the water, or whatever example you were using, I've been in that place uncountable times in my life. And, I hear what you say when you say that it's a hard game to play, and it's not any harder than the lying to myself game. What it is for me is it's a pattern, it's a habit, it's creating my environment so that that's the standard for myself, surrounding myself with people in my life that's the way they live their life, and so then that becomes normal.
Mm-hmm.
And what I experienced growing up is that lying and making excuses and self-deception is normal. So then then it's hard to shift, because now I have to like carve new neural pathways in my brain and like change my perception about myself that really was a false belief I had in myself anyway. And what I'm finding finally in my life is that telling the truth, deceiving myself less and less and less, is becoming more normal. And so then my life actually becomes easier. It's shifting. I've talked about this in the past. It's being really aware about what are the words I'm telling myself. All the things that you just mentioned before, like this back and forth. Well, why didn't you do it? Why didn't do it? Because of this. Like, once I can start to become aware of that conversation happening, then I can elevate to another level and be like, wait, what do I really want? And then I can tell the truth about this conversation happening. So it's like I've referenced this book a number of times, but Atlas Shrugged, one of my absolute favorite quotes in it is, whenever there's a contradiction, check your premise. So in the brain, there's this, why didn't you? Well, I didn't because there's a contradiction there. Well, what's the premise? The premise is that there's a conversation happening that's in disagreement. That's a truth. And if I can like have the self-awareness to tell the truth about the contradiction, now I've elevated my consciousness to a higher level. I can start asking myself different questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so at some point, I have to be willing to tell the truth, even about the bullshit. And that's the starting point, like to get myself out of the water and up into that next level of consciousness. I have to like dig deep sometimes, swallow my own ego, and be willing to tell the truth about the bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that also means cleaning it up with people in my life. Hey, just so you know, that thing I told you about whatever, that was a fabrication. That wasn't true. And I'm really sorry. And I don't want to show up that way in my life anymore. And I'm taking a stand with myself. And part of that is I need to be honest with you.
That's a good point.
And
That's
it's not about, yes, it is to some degree cleaning it up with the other person. But for me, what it is it's about, how do I want to show up as a person that relates to other people? I want to show up as somebody who's honest. And when I'm dishonest, I can tell them I was dishonest. I can be honest about the dishonesty.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like when you have a lie between you, when I have a lie between me and someone, and I know that it's there, I carry it around, I think about it, I get freaked out, like I'm going to get caught. And then how am I going to explain my way out of that bullshit mess? And it just becomes a waste of life energy. And so cleaning it up is a key thing. I'm so glad that you said that, because if we are smart, we go to the person and say, yeah, what I said the other day was not true, or what I said 10 years ago, remember that thing and then I can stop carrying it around and release that energy. And it's kind of like unclogging a drain pipe when you got some shit in the tube and you go and clean it out. It's like the water can flow again. It's like whew, the energy just like it dispels. Otherwise, what I do, I know what everybody does. We go into hiding. We're like, we don't want anybody to know. And then we walk around with this like, oh shit, kind of feeling. And what it
Mhm.
gets back to is am I conscious enough? Am I aware enough? Am I holding myself instead of being caught up in all my in my brain? Am I cognitive enough, if that's even the right way to say it? Am I in charge of what's going on here? Or is this thing in charge of me? Is this controlling me? So, I think that is one of the biggest battles is who's really in charge of this? So it's one of the ultimate challenges.
It is. It's a multi-tiered thing because who's in charge of this? Okay, this is in charge of this. Well, who's in charge of this? Okay, well, then who's in charge of this? It becomes this ever expansive question that actually is really interesting to explore, and it leads to some really interesting questions
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
answers even.
Right. Like how long do you want to feel bad about that? Is a great
Yeah.
question to ask myself when I'm in charge. Otherwise, when I'm not in charge, it's like, oh, you should feel bad. That was not the right thing to say. And they're going to hate you. And
Mhm.
all the people around you is going to hate you. And this thing just runs the show when I could just easily say, listen, lighten the fuck up, go clean it up and get on with your life.
Yep.
Take charge.
Yep.
Easy thing to say,
Well,
depending
yeah,
on
and
the time, right?
yeah, and it goes back to something I said earlier. It's what's normalized in your world. Like I get around people where the norm is, like let's say that you lied to your friend about something and you're like complaining about them and oh I didn't want to tell them the truth because of this and that and they're an asshole and that what and then I say to you, well, you're right, Dominic. You shouldn't tell them the truth because they are an asshole and screw them and it's not worth it anyway. And let's go have a beer and whatever. And now we're in this solidarity where I know because I just supported you. Now, when I come to you with, oh, I have this friend who's an asshole and he did this to me, then you're going to be like, yeah, he's an asshole. Da 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 da. And now we're in this like, let's not call each other out on each other's shit and we can just be miserable together. And that's so common. You're laughing and it's so common.
It
It's
is.
so common. And then that becomes like the normal level of consciousness at which people exist. Instead of like, hey, have you thought about telling him, like, Dominic, have you thought about telling him the truth? You'd feel a lot better about yourself if you did. Oh, well, that's a different level of support. And
Here's something, when you just said that, I had this thought. But if I said it to somebody, if you go and clean it up, you're going to feel better about yourself. But I think that most people that I've observed, they're like, fuck them. I'm not going to go and clean it up because they're fucked up and they're assholes and they said this and they did that and blah 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 blah. So they'll never. It's like, how do we get into communication with people so that they can understand that if they just step back for a minute and really could allow themselves to absorb some new information, like in order to if they clean something up, what's going to happen to, like you were saying earlier, their self-esteem, the way that they feel about themselves, their energy level, their whether they feel powerful or not powerful? Are they in hiding or not? And all that stuff. How in the heck do we get into communication with people so that they could be open to hearing things like that?
I think it's a wonderful question, Dominic,
Big
and
question.
I think it's genuinely a really simple answer in my experience, and that is I can't change people, and I can be very mindful about the people I spend my time with. I choose my associations very wisely, and the other side of it is that I can work on myself, so that Gandhi's famous quote, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And what I've noticed is that I could spend my whole life trying to convince people who never want to be convinced to work on themselves. And I've tried. For many years of my life, I chased around people. Why aren't you conscious? Why aren't you working on yourself? Do you realize how much happier you'll be if you just worked on? And ultimately, it caused a lot of resentment towards people. And what I can do is I can start working on myself. I can tell the truth to myself. I can start learning the art of self-deception so that I can undo it, so that I can start playing the game of self-love and self-truth. And then as a result, what happens is my life changes. My life becomes an example of what happens when someone tells the truth to themselves and cleans it up in their life and does these things. And I begin to attract people who are interested in that, instead of chasing these people who are hell-bent on staying at a low level of consciousness and trying to convince them and ultimately hurting myself. Like, I like to think about it, and there's a lot of truth to this, that there's a vibrational sense to it. If someone's vibrating at a higher vibration and is trying to get down to somebody's level, to a lower vibration, I'm by default lowering myself to a lower vibration.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm just doing my thing, well, I'm going to be attracting those people who are interested now in being a part of telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And the game, the ultimate win in this is that I win, is that I get to create the life that I want to create without causing all this butt hurt for people who aren't interested in working on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not my job. It's not my job to change people. If people want to wake up and work on themselves, they will. And if they don't, they don't. And it's a hard lesson to learn, because I want everybody to wake up. And not everyone's going to wake up.
I am on your side, man. I mean, I wish that we could just go poof, and people would be like, "Oh, tell me more." But it seems like over the years there's been, I mean, not always, but overwhelming majority, there's a lot of resistance. And I go through this thing like, I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know how to inspire people. So then I was like, okay, I can't inspire people with my words, and I'll just work on myself and feel good. And that works to some extent. However, it's a long road. I always question. So at the basic level, why do we lie in the first place? Why do we self-deceive? Why do we lie internally? Why do we lie externally? And there's no real logical answer to that. And I only can think from my experience is that, so if I lie to somebody about something that I did or didn't do, it's because I'm evaluating myself. I'm like judging myself about that. If they knew the truth, they would have bad thoughts about me, or I would feel not less powerful if they knew the truth, or they, you know what I mean? And so it's a self-evaluation that I have, that I prejudge myself, because if I told them that I did or didn't do something, then they're going to have a bad thought about me, or how do I say it? Or if I told them the truth, I would feel less powerful, which is, it's kind of like it's the opposite. If I just said things the way that they were, then I don't have to walk around carrying a bunch of false information in my brain. Everybody knows when you lie, or when we lie, we not only have to remember the lie, help me out. We have to remember
Who we told.
who we told, when we told.
Yeah. All kinds of things we have to remember about the lie.
It's like a floppy disk full of. I just exposed my age. A floppy disk. I'm an old floppy disk.
It's a cloud drive.
Exactly. A cloud drive of information that's like, we have to remember all that, because if we encounter the right person at the wrong time and they start asking us questions, we're going to get caught.
Yeah.
Survival. That's another thing.
I think it's, again, check the premise on this. And I think what you're saying is really profound, because I think a lot of people go around living their life thinking that what other people think about me is the most important thing. And how people perceive me is the most important thing. How is my image? How do I look? What do people think about me? And so that lends to lying. That lends to people not being honest. If I value what other people think over how I value myself, then that's going to lend towards me not telling the truth. It's going to lend towards embellishment. And then all those things that you're talking about, carrying around all this misinformation about myself that's portrayed on the world. And now I have to remember, okay, I told this person this lie about myself, but then I wanted to show up for this person a certain way. So I had to tell them a different story about myself. And now these two people get in a room together. And now who am I? Oh, shit. Whereas if I stop giving a shit about what people think about me and I honor the truth above everything else, now I can show up in any environment carefree. Whether you like me or not, I don't care. I like me.
I like that.
I like me because I tell the truth to myself. And you might be offended by what I have to say. You might find what I have to say to be repulsive. That's okay. I said it because I like it, because I like me. And we don't have to be friends. And that's part of this world. You're a different aspect of what it is to be human. I'm a different aspect of what it is to be human. In this lifetime, we don't have to choose to associate. Let's go find people that we want to associate with. It's no big deal. But the price I pay for trying to impress other people is so massive that I end up losing myself along the way, that I've really just decided to say, fuck it. I don't particularly care. And I've shown up sort of as a black sheep in every environment I've ever been in my life, in my family, in school, in my job. Nobody knows who I'm always the weird guy, and I don't care anymore. Like, that used to kind of bother me, but I don't care anymore because I've learned to love that part of myself.
What was that movie? That guy that told the truth all the time? It was Jim Carrey.
Oh, Yes Man? Is that what it's called?
I don't remember. Was it Yes Man?
I don't know, something like that.
Something like that. That was funny. But you said carefree.
Liar. That's what it is.
Liar. There you go.
Yeah.
I think that what you said was brilliant, because carefree, I think, is in fact the ultimate goal. Like, when you look at your 2-year-old daughter, Isla, right? So is she carefree?
Oh yeah.
Totally, right? Children are so carefree until they learn how to be deceptive. And then at that point, who do they learn that shit from?
Yeah.
Right?
Me.
They learn from us, right? So before they learn that stuff from us, they're carefree and they're very vulnerable. They'll say things that are just, like, oh, grandma's got lots of hair on her chin or something. That sounds kind of stupid, but I mean, they say things that are just so innocently wonderful.
Yeah.
They're carefree, and they giggle and laugh, and they don't hold on to stuff. And can you imagine being a carefree adult? And I feel like that's my ultimate goal. I'm getting closer and closer.
I agree. And one of the things I really love and appreciate about you, Dominic, is how you incorporate a sense of humor into so many things. And I feel like that is a way to relieve some of that self-deception, some of that feeling, that need to be right, that does, like, if I can learn how to laugh at myself, if I can laugh literally at the most ridiculous, absurd things I do, I can dissolve so much of that fear about what other people think about me and all that stuff. It's like I can just laugh about myself and realize I'm just ridiculous. I'm just a ridiculous human having a ridiculous human experience. And I don't have to take myself so seriously. And who cares? Like, so what? I did this. Just laugh at myself and let it go and move on.
That's exactly right. And we always have to remember, I mean, there's consequences. So, I mean, I'm not an angel. I've done things that I think that if I was, in a room full of people that have lied to, I was thinking about this while you were talking. So, if I went back to my childhood, right, and all of a sudden I'm in a room with all the people that I've lied to, they're all there, right, in one room. I'd be like, because I don't think I can handle it. And I think that what happens to a lot of people is that they accumulate so many lies, and they get so callous to lying, not only externally but internally, which is, I think, the more important thing. Like going back to what you were talking about, I was talking about earlier, doing your exercise, not coming up with excuses, being honest with myself, following through with my word. That, I think, is more important, and just as important, maybe a little bit more important, than telling external lies, because we can always go back and clean up those lies if we're smart. We don't have to worry about it. When we encounter somebody, it's like, oh God, here we go. I'm going to go see Uncle Fred. I lied to him about that. And oh God, he's probably going to ask me about it. So I think it's about keeping our, what's the word? Slate. Is that a right word?
Sure.
Keeping our shit clean, so we don't have to carry all that around. And then the result of that is that I feel light. I feel clean. I feel, give me some more words. Lighthearted.
I feel like I can have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
I feel like I can love myself. I feel, I mean, all these things. And I feel like I can have a genuine relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
Because I'm not like, I don't, if I can show up the way that I am and the way that I'm not for somebody 100%, then they have a real decision to make about, do I want to be with this person or not? Do I want to be friends with this person or not? Is this the kind of, and if I'm like constantly putting on acts and pretending like I'm never going to have genuine relationships.
Exactly. And flip it around. So, do I want to have a relationship with someone that's carrying around a bunch of crap?
Right.
And I want somebody that's lighthearted, carefree. They don't have to hide, all this stuff. That's the kind of relationship that I have, actually. And it's wonderful. There's nothing that compares to it.
I would much rather have somebody tell me the truth about something that hurts my feelings a little bit. And the truth is that if my feelings are hurt, there's probably truth in what they are telling me, that I need to look at myself and not deceive. And here's another nuanced level of self-deception. And this came up the other day where my girlfriend and I were in the kitchen, and she gave me some feedback about the way I talk to my daughter.
Ooh.
And it was really good feedback, because I felt this like this thing come up, and I didn't say anything. I just sat there and I didn't respond. And then like 15-20 minutes later, she's like, how do you feel about what I said? And I was like, I'm still processing it. Because I don't want to take, it would have been so easy. How dare you tell me how to talk to my daughter, and blah, 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 right? Like there's that thing that people go into, that defensive, like, you don't know. And they just, really what she was doing is she was exposing a part of me that I already knew was true. And she brought it to the light of day so that I could see it in myself. And she was this mirror. And I'm like, damn. And I would, and I told her this later on. I was like, yeah, what you said, it threw me off a little bit. And I was not necessarily hurt, and it like it caused me to really think about it. And I really value that you'd be honest with me instead of like bullshitting me and telling me, "Oh, you're such a good parent. Everything you do is so perfect as a dad." That's what I want to hear. But what I really want to hear is if she can tell me something that's going to help me be a better father, even if it goes for an hour, thank you. Like, thank you for loving me enough to tell me the truth. And you know, I think there's this pretty wise guy who said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." Well, that's how I want to show up for people, because I'm at a place in my life where I would much rather people be honest with me, even if the truth hurts a little bit. And so I'm willing to be honest with people, even if it hurts them a little bit, because at least then they have an opportunity to see themselves.
Mm-hmm. What's the other famous quote that the same guy talked about? The truth will set you
free, baby.
Free. And I think that freedom is the key, right? So it's not so much about telling the truth, because that's the work that needs to be done, right?
Yeah, that's
but
the vehicle.
the freedom is becoming childlike, getting back to that Isla innocence, you know, where I was when I was 1, 2, 3, until I began to look at my parents and like, oh, she lied about that. Oh, that's what I need to do. That's the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And and then it became a real challenge. But I know people that are they are fun-loving, childlike, giddy kind of people into their teens and 20s, because they were brought up in an environment where they weren't taught that external lying stuff. And I think that, well, we're at about 57 minutes, so I think that what we can do is extend this for part 2, and then begin to talk about more in depth about the internal lying and how that affects us and how we can improve and what we can actually do differently in order to grow that part of us. You know, keeping our external lies clean is a challenge, but then keeping our internal lies, I think, is the real ultimate game.
Yeah, because that's whatever's on the inside is what's manifesting out into the reality. So I get this right. It's like, if I can see myself clearly, then I have clear eyes to see what's really going on.
Yeah. And if I keep my internal lies in check, my external lies are like they don't happen.
Right.
Because I won't go there.
Right. Because I understand the consequence of doing it.
Exactly. So I mean, I know that this is one of those topics that are really, it's mind bending. And I mean, I like to think that I can talk about it in a way that makes sense. And sometimes I'm like here, there, and everywhere, and it doesn't really make sense. However, it's an important topic in the bigger picture of life, because it makes a difference in the way that I feel now. And if I could, I wish that I had a magic wand where I could just go poof and everybody would be like, oh, that's the game. And there would be no wars. People would start to get along. Everybody would be cooperative. That's the thing that I think about.
Yeah.
How can we get this message out to the bigger population so that it becomes a what's it called when the snowball effect happens?
Like a tipping point, like a self-perpetuation.
Yes. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing?
Well, it's already happening, Dominic. That's the beautiful thing. There is a mass awakening happening all over the planet, and people are on this. We're just a part of it, and I'm so happy to be a part of it, and so happy that people are waking up and that people are shifting the game to consciousness and telling the truth. And it's a beautiful thing, because that is how we're going to create a free world. That's how we're going to create free humans that are happy, alive, with great relationships. And it's the key. The truth is the
I think
foundation
it is
of
the
everything.
key. I think that that JC was on it. The truth will set you free, and that freedom is the childlike thing that when people begin to experience that, like I have, and I know that there's a lot of people. My experience, though, when I observe, when I look out there, it's like 5% of the people that I encounter are on that path, and the other 95% don't even know that it's available.
Mm-hmm.
And that eats at me. So one of my missions, and I appreciate you for being there with me to put this out there. I don't know what kind of an effect that we will have, but if we touch 1 or 2 or million people, one of my guys that I follow, Sadhguru, he's like, I'm a complete failure because I thought that I could, put this word out to, I don't know how many billion people are on the planet. I forgot. Help me.
8
billion. That he was going to make 8 billion people happy by sharing the information that he had. And he says now, after 20 or 30 years, something like that, he's been doing this. He's like, I'm a complete failure. It's
Yeah.
kind of funny, but it's a great mission.
We're finding each other. We really are. And I'll tell you what, these podcasts, I don't know who they're reaching out there, but they vitalize me, and they bring life to me, and then I bring that out to my workday. I bring that to my partnership. I bring that to my family. So what we're doing is certainly having an impact in my world.
At some level.
Yes, sir.
That's right. That's right. Okay, man. Next week.
Same time, same place.
Same place you wanted. So we'll call it part 2.
Part 2. We were dangerously close to coming up with a name this week.
I know. It was dangerously close.
We're right there. I think we're close.
The last thing that I sent you, I thought was really good. What was I can't.
I'll double check it.
I'm not going to say it out loud.
Yeah, I'll go back and double check.
It was something that you said, and then something that I kind of added on. So yeah. It was a combination of both. So
we'll figure it out. I'm excited to do that.
Take care, man. Enjoy.
See everybody. Bye, Dominic.
Thanks, everybody. See you later. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye for now.